Today I'm looking at Wiseguys, and like the other books that I've looked at, I wouldn't really consider this one a novel. If anything, Wiseguys is the biography of Henry Hill. Wiseguys was written by American author and screenwriter Nicholas Pileggi in 1985. Pileggi is best known for writing books like Casino and its film adaptation of the same name, and also producing true crime inspired films like American Gangster and The Irishman. In addition to writing Wiseguys, he, alongside the legendary Martin Scorsese, penned the screenplay for Wiseguys and called it Goodfellas, which was released in 1990. The story takes place in an Irish-Italian neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York in 1955. Henry was born into a family of 9 with 7 siblings, a loving Italian mother and a hard-working Irish father. At the age of 12, Henry is discontent with his life and is eager not to live in poverty like the people around him. He admires the guys affiliated with the Luchas family and wants nothing more to be like them. Henry ingratiates himself to Paul Vero. In the film, Scorsese chooses to rename several of the characters from the book. He chooses to call the Veros the Ciceros. Paulie is the eldest of 5 brothers and the boss of their little section of Brooklyn. At first, Henry serves the family by doing small tasks like parking cars at the cab stand and making sandwiches for the boys. After gaining Paulie's trust, he's then allowed to go with the boys on missions setting fires to vehicles and buildings of their competition. After a short while, Paulie lets Henry in on the credit card schemes and also allows him to sell cigarettes and other stolen goods.
Hi, Mom. What do you think? Look at my shoes. Aren't they great?
My God. You look like a gangster.
Henry's parents don't like the fact that he's spending so much time with Paulie and his merry men, and Henry hasn't been to school in months, which earns him a beatdown from his dad.
It's a letter from school. Says you haven't been there in months.
Months? You think this is fun? A bum!
In turn, Paulie and his boys beat down the mailman and force him to bring any letters from the school directly to them. After getting arrested for stolen credit cards, he gains the trust of the entire family and crew, including Jimmy Burke, by not cooperating with the police.
Congratulations. Here's your graduation present.
What? I pinched.
Everybody gets pinched, but you did it right. You told them nothing and they got nothing.
I thought you'd be mad.
You took your first pinch like a man and you learned the 2 greatest things in life.
What?
Never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut.
Hey, here he is. Oh, you broke your cherry.
The one thing that's always bothered me about mafia movies are the goofy nicknames.
They're Fat Andy. This guy's Frankie the Wop. Freddie No Nose.
How you doing?
And then there was Pete the Killer, who was Sally Balls' brother. Then you had Nicky Eyes.
What's up, guy?
And Jimmy 2 Times, who got that nickname because he said everything twice, like...
I'm gonna go get the papers,
Even though the film is nearly 2.5 hours long, Scorsese and Pileggi still had to cut out huge chunks of the events from the book. They could have easily made Goodfellas a 2-part film. Another event is the Air France heist, which is briefly mentioned in the film, but in the book they explain that the airport has multiple vaults used for storing money and goods, but the money and the goods are only in the vaults for a short period of time and knows what's in the vault or how long the items will be in there. So they need to be able to access the vaults whenever they want. The entire heist hinges on them getting the key from an overzealous guard who keeps the key for the vault with him at all times. He even takes the keys home with him, and when he leaves the house for personal matters, he takes the key with him as well. So Henry and his pal Frenchie hire a prostitute to work as Frenchie's swinger girlfriend. They spend several weeks trying to get close to the guard, until one evening they get him to hang out with them in a sauna. While the guard's in the sauna, Henry steals the key and gets multiple copies made and returns the key without raising any suspicion. From there on in, they have unlimited access to millions of dollars worth of cash and goods.
Now take me to jail.
The film glosses over Henry's 4-year prison stint. The film briefly mentions how comfortable and how good the mob guys had it, but the book goes into further detail. Paulie, for instance, makes stoves for the guys to cook in their cells, and even if the stoves get confiscated, he can easily go into the kitchen and to get more supplies to build more stoves. Paulie spends between $500 and $1,000 per week on food and expensive scotch. Everyone else spends between $200 to $300 a week greasing the guards so they turn a blind eye to their activities. After about 2 years, Henry gets put on farm duty where he's able to move around all hours of the day and parts of the night unsupervised. This allows him to smuggle drugs like weed, pills, and acid into the prison, and even allows him to sneak out and hook up with Karen. He was also able to get weekend-long religious furloughs, which allowed him to leave the prison with the pretense that he was spending the weekend at Jewish events. The next big heist is the Lufthansa heist, worth several $1 million in cash and jewelry. The heist goes off nearly flawlessly, but with the exception of one dummy who takes his mask off, allowing one of the restrained guards to see his face. The film briefly skims over nearly every aspect of the heist and how it turns sour. In the film, Martin and Nicholas make it seem like Jimmy's being overly paranoid and greedy.
It's my wife. Come here. I want to show you something. Jimmy, come here. Isn't she gorgeous? I bought it for my wife. It's a coupe. I love that car.
What did I tell you before? I talked to you before, didn't I? Didn't I say what was going on? Didn't I say not to go buy anything for a while? Got a fucking car?
It's a wedding gift, Jimmy. It's from my mother. It's under her name. I just got married.
Love that car. Are you nuts?
What are you getting
What are you
excited?
getting excited for? Are you stupid? We got a million fucking bulls out there. Everybody's watching us, and you get a fucking car.
But
You
it's
telling me I'm
under
excited?
my name. It's a wedding
I
gift.
don't give a fuck whose name it's.
Stupid or what? Did you hear what I said? Don't buy anything. Don't get anything. Nothing. Okay, what are you, I can't believe this. What are you, stupid or what? Excuse me. What's the matter? Take it off. Take it off. Take it off. Take it off.
Didn't I tell you not to get anything big? Didn't I tell you not to attract attention? How many days one guy gets a fucking caddy, the other one gets a $20,000 make? Bring it back.
All right,
Bring it back. I don't care what you do with it. Bring it where you got it before. Get it out of here. I don't care. You understand? Get it out of here.
All right. Let's go. I'm on it.
Whereas in the book, Jimmy has every right to be paranoid for multiple reasons. Paulie's crew gets a tip about the heist from one of the guys on the inside named Lou Warner. Lou has a big stupid mouth, and before the heist, he tells everyone about the heist. So when the police start asking questions, Lou's name comes up repeatedly. Stax, who was supposed to dispose of the getaway vehicles, decides to get high, and the cops find the vehicle and gets everyone's fingerprints. The one guard who saw the guy's face was able to give an accurate description. This allows the FBI to get warrants for wiretapping and performing 24-hour surveillance. So Jimmy had no choice but to kill practically everyone involved in the. If you're just watching the film, you might wonder why the helicopter starts following Henry. The book explains that one day a low-level drug dealer gets pinched by the police and turns out he's a confidential informant. In exchange to save his own ass, he tells the police about Henry Hill's drug operation. Later on in the book, we find out that the informant is the son of one of Paulie's crew members, named Robert Germain Sr. He then gives the go-ahead to have his son killed. But even with the informant and the helicopter, the police still didn't have enough evidence for an arrest or a search warrant, until Henry's stupid mule ignores his warning and uses the landline to discuss details of when and where they were going to move the drugs.
Hello?
Hey, it's me. You ready?
Yeah.
You know what to do?
Yeah.
Don't yeah me, Lois. This is important. Make sure you leave the house when you make the call. Hear me? Call from an outside line. I mean it.
Jesus, you must think I'm dumb. What are you bugging me for?
Hick, just make sure you do it. I mean what?
You're such a pain.
Hey! Just do it!
Okay.
Unfucking-believable. All of them. Every fucking girl in my life. What does she do after she hangs up with me? After everything I told her, after all her yeah, she picks up the phone and calls from the house. Now, if anybody was listening, they'd know everything. They'd know that a package was leaving from my house, and they'd even have the time and the flight number thanks to her.
In the book, after the police search the house multiple times, they can't find any drugs. And then one day in court, Henry nods at Karen, and for some reason, she interprets this as a sign to flush the drugs. This was completely idiotic, and she deserved every bit of scolding she got from Henry. But in the film, things are a little bit different. In the film, she flushes the drugs as the police are trying to kick in the front door. To me, this is a very smart and common move, and I don't think she deserves to get scolded for her actions.
You treated me like a fucking jerk. I was never nothing to you.
Paulie, after what you said, I couldn't come to you. I was ashamed. I'm ashamed now. But I got nowhere else to go, Paulie. You're all I've got, and I really, really need you.
Take this. Now I gotta turn my back.
In the film, Paulie tosses Henry a few bucks before turning his back on him. While in the book, Paulie plays it cool and stays by Henry's side until one day Paulie tries to arrange a meeting for Henry at a spot where they regularly have people killed. Even Jimmy tries to set him up to get killed on a trip to Florida. Before all of that, Henry was on the fence about snitching, but then Jimmy tries to whack Karen, which is the final straw, and pushes Henry into the arms of the FBI.
Henry's gonna be in a witness protection program. They're not gonna be able to get to him. Conversation after conversation, you're talking to Henry on the phone. It doesn't matter, because whether he goes to jail or whether he stays on the street, he beats the case. he's a dead man.
I mean, what goes on?
Why don't you guys go down to Wall Street and get some real fucking crooks? Whoever sold you those...
Him here in the courtroom today. Your Honor, please let the record reflect that Mr. Hill has identified the defendant, James Conway. Your Honor, let the record reflect that Mr. Hill has identified the defendant, Paul Cicero.
The film stays true to most of the events in the book as best they can, even considering time and budget constraints, and even the things they do change are inconsequential. I would say that Goodfellas and Wiseguys might be one of the few times where the book and the movie are on par with one another.